We're counting down the 10 lost Canadian stores only true Canadians remember. From suburban pet superstores and home decor hideaways to dusty variety chains, catalog order counters, and beloved department store giants, each entry reveals a piece of our country's shopping ritual now vanished. What made these stores so special? And what led to their final closing bell? Travel back through decades of Canadian retail as we uncover unique memories, regional quirks, and bittersweet goodbyes. Let's begin, starting with number 10. Petcetera opened its doors in Vancouver in 1997, promising Canadians a new kind of pet store. Sprawling suburban superstores where families could pick up everything from goldfish to grooming supplies under one roof. At its peak, the chain grew to more than 100 locations from British Columbia to Newfoundland, each one packed with aisles of pet food, adoption centers, and the hum of clippers from in-store grooming salons. For many, a Saturday meant letting kids visit the puppies or chatting with staff about the best dog treats, the air thick with the scent of dog shampoo and sawdust from the small animal cages. Petcetera wasn't just a place to buy pet food. It became a fixture in suburban shopping plazas, a stop on the weekend errand circuit, and for some, the first introduction to pet adoption. But behind the cheerful branding, trouble brewed. In the mid-2000s, animal welfare groups and the BCSPCA raised alarms about the company's sourcing practices, alleging that some puppies came from high-volume breeders. Petcetera responded by highlighting its adoption programs and promising change, but public trust took a hit. By 2009, rapid expansion, fierce competition from U.S. chains, and the fallout from the sourcing controversy pushed Petcetera into bankruptcy protection under the CCAA. Stores closed in waves, leaving behind empty storefronts and the echo of barking dogs in the aisles. For those who remember, there's still that sharp tang of dog shampoo and the memory of peering into the adoption window, hoping to bring a new friend home. Petcetera's story is a reminder of how quickly a retail ritual and the values behind it can disappear. Home Outfitters arrived in 1998, launched by Hudson's Bay Company as Canada's answer to the home decor superstore. At its peak, 69 locations stretched from Vancouver to Halifax, each one a sprawling maze of kitchen gadgets, bedding towers, and rows of gleaming cookware. Shoppers wandered wide aisles, testing the weight of a frying pan or brushing hands across stacks of pastel towels. For many, it was the ritual of choosing wedding gifts, hunting for the right duvet, or matching fabric swatches to paint chips. A tactile experience that online shopping could never quite replace. Home Outfitters was more than a place to buy sheets. It offered seasonal displays, in-store cooking demos, and a sense of possibility for anyone looking to refresh their space. But as e-commerce took hold, and competitors like Bed Bath & Beyond and Amazon grew, the chain struggled to keep up. HBC's own flagship stores began absorbing the best brands, while Home Outfitters' digital presence lagged behind. In February 2019, Hudson's Bay Company announced that all remaining stores would close by summer, ending a chapter in Canadian home shopping. The scent of new ceramic, the touch of a fabric swatch, and the promise of a freshly styled room faded with the last locked doors. Saan Stores began in Winnipeg in 1947, quietly spreading across the prairies and into British Columbia. For decades, the Saan sign was a welcome sight on rural main streets. Plain brown tiles, handwritten sale signs, and racks of jeans and socks stacked for families who needed value close to home. At its peak, Saan reached 232 stores, anchoring small-town life where big chains rarely bothered to go. The Friday night supply run, the hunt for school uniforms, the quick stop after hockey, these weren't just errands. They were rituals that brought neighbors together under the steady glare of fluorescent lights. In many towns, Saan was more than a store. It was the last local employer, the place where you'd run into half the community, the spot where a teenager might get their first job. But as Walmart and other big box giants rolled across Canada in the late 1990s and early 2000s, Saan found itself squeezed by lower prices and changing habits. Bankruptcy in 2004 meant liquidation sales and shuttered storefronts, leaving behind a gap that online shopping could never fill. For anyone who remembers, the musty scent of folded clothes and the buzz of those overhead lights still linger in memory, a reminder of a time when one small store could hold a community together. Byway arrived in Ontario strip malls in 1976, offering families a new way to stretch a dollar. At its peak, 249 stores dotted city blocks and suburban plazas, each one packed with wire bins of socks, budget basics, and the famous "no bag, no sale" signs taped to the checkout. For many working-class shoppers, Byway was the go-to for back-to-school essentials. Last-minute umbrellas, or a quick restock of kitchen towels. The aisles were always crowded. The shelves stacked high with closeout deals. And the scent of plastic packaging and cardboard tags hung in the air, a smell that still lingers in memory for those who grew up in Toronto or Mississauga. Byway's appeal was simple: low prices, no frills, and a promise that you'd always find something you needed, even if you didn't know you were looking for it. Parents would send kids in with a $5 bill and trust they'd come out with a bag of socks, a pack of pencils, and maybe a treat from the impulse rack. The store's plain black and yellow logo became a badge of thrift, a quiet nod to the art of making ends meet in an expensive city. But as the 1990s wore on, Byway faced new threats. Dollar stores and big box giants carved up the discount market, and its parent company, Dilex, struggled under mounting debt. By 2001, the last Byway closed its doors. The disappearance of those crowded aisles and bargain bins signaled more than the loss of a store. It was the end of a neighborhood ritual. For many, the smell of cardboard tags and the thrum of the checkout line are all that remain of a place that once made every dollar count. A&B Sound opened its doors on Seymour Street in Vancouver in 1959, and for decades, no West Coast Saturday felt complete without a stop inside. This was the place where teenagers and audiophiles gathered to test out the latest hi-fi gear, crammed elbow to elbow in demo rooms, while the walls rattled from the thump of speaker bass. At its peak, A&B Sound operated 20 superstores across British Columbia and Alberta, each one stacked with rows of shrink-wrapped CDs, record bins, and towers of boxed electronics. Staff in black vests swapped music recommendations, and shoppers lined up at midnight for new album releases, or the chance to score a deal on a big screen TV before anyone else. A&B Sound wasn't just about product, it was about the ritual. Friends debated which stereo had the deepest bass, parents bought their kids their first Walkman, and every visit came with the hum of amplifiers and the promise of musical discovery. The chain's bold expansion in the early 2000s, chasing Best Buy and Future Shop with ever larger stores, left it overextended, buried under debt, just as online music and electronics giants changed the rules. By 2008, bankruptcy shuttered the last locations. Still, for those who remember, the pulse of those demo speakers and the gleam of fresh CD cases can bring back a whole era of West Coast youth and music culture. A time when A&B Sound was the heartbeat of the block. Metropolitan Stores began as a single 5 and dime in 1920, yet by the mid-century the name Metro was stitched into the fabric of over 600 Canadian towns and cities. For generations, these variety stores were more than a place to buy socks or a spool of thread. They were the heartbeat of Main Street. The glass candy counter was a magnet for kids. Its jars lined up like jewels, each penny spent echoing against the glass as the clerk scooped out a handful of jelly beans or licorice. In the back, lunch counters served grilled cheese and milkshakes to shoppers taking a break from bargain hunting, while the scent of fresh popcorn mingled with the tang of new rubber boots stacked by the entrance. Metropolitan thrived on routine. After school, kids would bolt through the swinging door for a treat, the bell overhead announcing their arrival. Grandparents shopped for fabric and patterns. Parents browsed the rotating bins for deals on pajamas or school supplies. The store's creaky wooden floors and handwritten sale signs felt like home, especially in small towns where Metro was the social center, a place to catch up, share news, and find a little comfort on a rainy day. But as malls grew and big box giants swept across Canada in the 1980s and 90s, the old rituals faded. The chain struggled to keep pace, squeezed by discount competitors and changing tastes. In 1997, after decades as a mainstay, Metropolitan filed for bankruptcy. The last stores closed quietly, leaving behind empty windows and the faint memory of candy jar clinks and the bell above the door. For those who remember, Metro wasn't just a store. It was a chapter in the story of small-town Canada, a ritual lost to time. Consumers Distributing opened its first store in Toronto in 1957, launching a shopping ritual that would become familiar across Canada. Instead of browsing aisles, customers leafed through thick catalogs at home, circling wish list items with a pen. On catalog day, families gathered around the kitchen table, picking out toys, appliances, or jewelry, then filled out order slips and brought them to a small showroom. The bell at the counter signaled your turn. Order form in hand, you would wait as staff disappeared into the back to fetch your chosen item from the warehouse shelves. Sometimes, anticipation gave way to disappointment, a sold-out slip or a mispicked box, the result of a system that struggled to keep up with demand. By the early 1990s, Consumers Distributing had grown to more than 400 outlets nationwide, from big cities to small towns, but inventory audits revealed error rates climbing as high as 20%. Customers grew frustrated with empty-handed trips and long waits, especially during the holiday rush. The store's unique catalog-to-counter model, once a marvel of efficiency, became a liability in the face of big-box competitors and the first waves of online shopping. By 1996, mounting losses forced the company into bankruptcy. For those who remember, there's still the feel of the plastic catalog cover, the sound of the bell at the order desk, and the hope that your number would be called next. A ritual of patience and possibility that vanished with the chain's last stores. Woodward's began in Vancouver in 1902, quickly weaving itself into the fabric of West Coast life. For families in British Columbia and Alberta, a visit to Woodward's was more than shopping. It was a ritual that meant groceries, new shoes, and birthday gifts all in one trip. The food floor, a full-scale grocery store inside each location, offered fresh bread, seafood, and late-night essentials, long before superstores became the norm. This hybrid model, merging department store flair with everyday groceries, set Woodward's apart and matched the rhythms of West Coast cities. The real magic came on $1.49 day. On the first Tuesday of every month, crowds packed the aisles, drawn by the promise of deals and the catchy jingle. $1.49 day Woodward's, that played on radios and echoed through the store. The tune became a local anthem, as familiar as the neon W shining above Hastings Street. Shoppers remember the smell of fresh bread, the clatter of carts, and the rush to grab bargains before they disappeared. It was a day that turned shopping into a citywide event and left a mark on anyone who grew up in Vancouver or Edmonton. At its peak, Woodward's ran 26 stores, anchoring malls and downtowns from the coast to the Rockies. Generations met under the neon sign, kids spent their first allowance, and families found both groceries and Sunday best in one place. But by the early 1990s, national chains and rising costs squeezed the business. The food floor, once a point of pride, became hard to sustain. In 1993, Woodward's filed for bankruptcy, leaving a void and turning the $1.49 jingle into a memory of West Coast identity. Zellers was the store where Canadian families found everything they needed, from school clothes to board games, all under one bright red and white roof. Founded in 1931, Zellers grew to more than 350 stores at its peak. stretching from British Columbia to Newfoundland. For decades, it was the anchor of suburban malls and small-town plazas, the place where weekend errands turned into family outings. Kids raced through Toyland, eyes wide at the shelves of action figures and board games, while parents browsed bargain racks or stopped for a break at the Zellers diner. The grilled cheese sandwiches and bottomless coffee became a ritual for many, a simple pleasure after a morning of shopping. Zellers was more than a discount chain. It was a slice of Canadian life. The store's mascot, Zeddy the Bear, greeted children at community events, and the slogan, "Where the lowest price is the law," echoed through TV ads and in-store announcements. Seasonal aisles transformed with each holiday, and the red apple rack promised deals that felt like small victories. For many, the memory of the PA system calling out blue light specials or the hum of fluorescent lights above the toy aisles is still vivid. But by the late 2000s, Zellers faced mounting pressure from Walmart and other big-box giants. In 2011, Hudson's Bay Company made a controversial decision: sell most Zellers leases to Target, a move designed to raise capital and fend off the competition. The news landed hard on store staff and shoppers alike. Many managers learned about the deal from generic memos or local news, left to answer questions without clear answers. By 2013, nearly every Zellers location had closed its doors, leaving behind empty diners and echoes of the PA. A handful of pop-up revivals in 2023 brought back the name, but the original spirit, the grilled cheese, the toy runs, the sense of belonging, remains a memory for those who grew up with Zellers as a fixture of everyday Canadian life. Eaton's was more than a store. It was a cornerstone of Canadian life for over a century. Founded in 1869 by Timothy Eaton, the company grew from a single dry goods shop in Toronto to over 100 locations across the country. For generations, an outing to Eaton's wasn't just about shopping. It was a family ritual. A day downtown or at the mall, a moment to marvel at the grand marbled arcades and to gather beneath the soaring ceilings. The flagship stores in Toronto, Montreal, and Winnipeg became city landmarks, their names woven into the fabric of each place. Every winter, crowds pressed against the glass to see the legendary holiday windows. Animated scenes, snowy villages, whirring trains, twinkling lights drew school field trips and families from miles away, noses pressed to the frosty glass. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of new carpet and perfume counters, the clatter of escalators, and the low murmur of shoppers drifting past the displays. The Eaton Santa Claus Parade was a highlight of the season, launching in 1905 and growing into a national event broadcast coast to coast. For many, it signaled the true start of the holidays, with children craning for a glimpse of Santa as floats rolled down the street. But perhaps nothing captured the Canadian imagination like the Eaton's catalog. Arriving in mailboxes from St. John's to Yellowknife, it was a wish book and a lifeline, especially for rural families. Pages were dog-eared, items circled in pen, and orders sent off with hope. The catalog wasn't just about products. It was about possibility, about bringing the world to your doorstep, no matter how far you lived from a city. By the 1990s, the world Eaton's helped build was changing. In 1991, the chain tried to reinvent itself with everyday value pricing, scrapping the beloved sales and discounts that once packed the aisles. Loyal shoppers drifted away. Rivals like Hudson's Bay and Sears pressed in, while Walmart's arrival rewrote the rules of retail. The company filed for bankruptcy in 1997, then again in 1999. When the final stores closed that October, designers in Toronto wept as they dismantled the last holiday windows. It felt, as one put it, like saying goodbye to our second home. What vanished with Eaton's wasn't just a place to shop. It was the ritual of meeting in the tea room, the anticipation of the catalog's arrival, the magic of those holiday windows, and the pride of seeing your city's name on a department store that felt grander than any other. the loss left a gap in Canadian life, a reminder that sometimes, when a store disappears, it takes a piece of the country with it. From the humble aisles of Petcetera to the grand holiday windows of Eaton's, our countdown of 10 lost Canadian stores traces a vanished world of shopping rituals and community touchstones. These entries reveal how retail was once woven into the fabric of Canadian towns. Whether it was Saan's rural bargains, Byway's budget finds, or Woodward's legendary $1.49 days. The most shocking stories, like Zellers' dramatic exit after decades as a family anchor, or the total collapse of Eaton's, show that even icons weren't immune to changing tastes, corporate strategy, and the rise of big box and online retail. Across the list, a clear pattern emerges. These stores disappeared not just because of business shifts, but because the role of retail in Canadian life evolved. What made each entry qualify wasn't just its size, but the sensory memories and community rituals it created. In remembering these stores, we glimpse a Canada defined by gathering, browsing, and shared tradition, a world replaced by speed, convenience, and screens. Their stories remind us how much local identity and everyday connection can be lost when retail changes, and why those memories still matter.